Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 230th edition of the Frank and Stan chat. And as I say every week, because we generally have a guest, we have another guest. If you're watching on video, you'll be able to see that Lisa Lea-Weston has joined us again. Hello, Lisa.
Hi,
Good
Lisa.
morning.
Yeah,
Hi, morning.
here we are again. Yeah, Lisa was a guest a little while back, I think just over a year ago, but we were really struck by the work that Lisa's organisation does and how, well, certainly for me, I have a friend who really, I think would have benefited greatly from the sort of work you do. Yeah, anyway, so we'll get round to that in a minute. But as you can see, anybody watching the video, well, if you're not, if you're listening on the podcast, Stan has got this absolutely epic scene behind him, which has got beaches and a headland and a few sort of static caravans as well. So just explain where you are, Stan.
I'm in Anglesey, North Wales, in the little town of Benlock, which yes has hundreds of caravans, but on the particular site we're at, every caravan manages to get that kind of view because it's on a hillside. So that's a photograph, but I did take that photograph this morning just before we started, so it's genuinely what it looks like from the deck of my caravan.
So there's a walkway, isn't there? Or is this a path down to that beach from
Yeah,
your?
we just walked through the site down to the beach.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah. Well, we also have a static caravan in North Wales, which is up in the hills, and it's about a mile away from the beach. Um, and we're so high up that actually you can get down to the beach, but you can't get back. It's we've done that once, but it's an absolute killer. But anyway, yeah. And I was saying to Stan, it's so lovely to be able to have these, periods away and actually the weather be really nice because I suspect there are times, Stan, when it's absolutely lashing down and you're thinking, what the hell are we doing
La-
here?
Last weekend, when we had our grandson with us, it rained for most of the time. We did get him on the beach on one day, and it was nice enough, but the rest was just rain and very strong winds.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
wasn't bad.
I don't know also what you've done with your signal, Stan, because we've been highly critical of the Benlec broadband internet connection, but it
It,
looks
it's
absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's been quite strong today. It was as strong as my home one was at sort of a couple of generations ago. But I am concerned because the caravan behind us seems to be having a girls' weekend.
Oh God.
There's sort of probably six or seven women having breakfast. If they all go on their phones at the same time,
Okay, well, Lisa, where are you? Tell everybody where you
Um,
are.
I'm very warm down in Devon, Chudley, which is between Exeter and Torquay. Um, yeah, it's pretty glorious today. So, but I have a day of, supporting teenagers in their movements around the countryside later on. So my eldest has just finished formal education this
Oh,
week.
wow, wow.
But, we'd like a lift somewhere this afternoon, and my youngest has got one more week to go, but she'll need picking up. Yeah, it's a bit of a busy afternoon this afternoon.
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
Lisa, one of the things that, I mean, do you want to just explain to colleagues who didn't perhaps watch or listen to the first time you were on what you actually do and the organisation you run?
So I run Talking Heads Supervision, which provides external one-to-one, mostly supervision for head teachers, senior leaders, CEOs across the United Kingdom now. And from that kind of starting premise of believing that senior leaders themselves really need external one-to-one confidential time to say how they are, who they are, what's going on at work, um, that can trickle down across the whole school. And so what we found in our growth, hugely probably since it was last with you, is that we work with over 400 individuals, but we're working with over 250 organisations.
Right.
And so that's really kind of proving that people then go, can you please see my pastoral lead? Can you see my Senko? But it takes time, and we take it steady, and we don't rush at that, and we just let that impact happen. And then we've just recently launched training, which Penny Sturt, who works with us, and Joe wrote book using supervision in schools. And so then we've just launched so we can offer an internal model of supervision then. So once everybody at the senior leadership is really nice and steady in external supervision, when supervision is being talked about and trickling down through the school and children are at the heart of those conversations, then we move towards that internal model of training, which there's a few schools now that are on their third round of training staff where everyone is in supervision, top in external, but then this internal model. And everyone's then having supervision to their role at that top level, but also supervision on their supervision. So they're constantly learning still.
Yes.
So that's I'm really excited about that.
I'm interested in how many leaders come to you when actually they're in a very difficult place, and how many of them actually come to you when they either experience a difficult place and don't want to repeat it, or actually I'm just think this has got some value, so we're perhaps not at a critical point, but actually I think this is a bit of work we could do that could help improve the culture within the organisation and the support people give or get.
Do you know what? I haven't got accurate stats on that, but given that I speak to everybody, I would say that it's kind of 50-50, actually. We tend to get more referrals, recommendations from people like yourselves and other kind of colleagues when people are in crisis, and they'll be like, right, you need to go, and they know that we will scoop them up and really take care of them. But actually, the more that word of mouth has got what supervision is out there and how it's different to coaching, the more senior leaders, I think, just look at it and go, that makes sense. That's the bit that I've been missing. That place where I'm still thinking about the culture I'm creating, what it's like for me to be isolated and hold all that responsibility, and how am I doing this for the children and young people that I serve. And that is the contract, and that's different to coaching. And we see a lot of people who have coaching and supervision because they are distinct and actually really support each other when they're going well. So I think it's about 50-50.
Right.
Which maybe surprises you, I don't know.
Yeah, it does. I would have thought, I suppose in a way it's encouraging.
I think the model that people who are directed to you tend to be in crisis. People that hear about you and think that sounds like something I want to do possibly aren't in crisis yet. And I'm an absolute admirer of what you do, mainly because I'd never heard of supervision until I was asked to do some work with social services when I was working for a local authority. And they spoke about this magical thing called supervision that I just, well, two things. One, I couldn't understand how social services could afford it because education just didn't have that in its thoughts at all. And, the idea that somebody could have supervision, talk to somebody about their role, about the job, about how they were feeling, not necessarily about the performance, but about how things are going and what's causing me issues and what's not. Technically, I suppose people should be talking to line managers about that, but that's not easy, is it? But I thought supervision.
Sometimes the problems are.
Yeah,
well, absolutely. And supervision helps you. It quite often helps how you take it back to your line manager as well. It can really help you get your thoughts in order. That supervision on what is it I really need to say to my line manager. We get a lot of feedback about that from people that we work. Go, God, if I had not seen you today, this is how I'd have communicated. And actually, I can see that would have been disastrous.
Rebuilding the way schools worked from scratch, you would build supervision in, wouldn't you? Now,
absolutely, you would.
Whereas that just doesn't exist apart from people like yourself who provide it.
And it is gathering momentum, isn't it? So the DFE funded education support for the next 3 years, and we're partway through that, to see, or have seen 4,000 senior leaders by the end of that, for 6 fully funded monthly sessions. So that's kind of gathering momentum. And then UCL are publishing a framework in September, October, the Supervision Network, which is sort of informal, but getting people together who are offering something in the space and trying to put out there something around this is what you need to be looking for. These are the qualifications. This is what the standards.
Because it'd be easy for me or Stan. I don't know if it'd be easy, but is it easy?
It would be.
Question for me. Stan and I say, "Oh, we're experts now in supervision."
Yeah.
You know, so it's an unregulated sort of area, is it? I mean, in a sense, you end up putting yourself out there, and anybody can.
Well, it's not regulated, which is a thing. In the same way as people think that counselling and psychotherapy is regulated, but it isn't. They have membership organisations, but there are few professions that are regulated. What Talking Heads has set is we've set a set of standards which are even exceed the supervision framework that's coming out, and because actually we're much more further down the line than anyone else in terms of what we offer. So that framework will say that 6 per year. We're like, no, three sessions a term, 9 per academic year, because ultimately it's still about safeguarding children, and part of safeguarding children is how well the person is. And no one turns up with when they've made a mistake or they're overwhelmed to someone they only see 6 times a year or 3 times a year, but someone they see 9 times a year who they're doing who really holds them in mind and who they look forward to seeing. Then you're going to show up and go, oh, things are not good. And then we can do something about that. So I'm really passionate that it might be that framework comes out and people go, well, why would we go to Talking Heads? They're asking us to do more. And I'm like, well, I will never change that.
Yeah.
What about the clash with coaching? Because that's something else that I see quite a bit of, I'd say, amateur coaches, people saying, I can come and do some coaching for you. Again, unregulated as far as I'm aware, just people who've read about it or had a go. And that gets mixed up, I think, with counselling, with supervision, with everything as a sort of, I'll coach you through these issues.
Yeah.
Whereas I think I've got a responsibility to try and, which I'm doing now by spending time with you, to be really clear about what people need to look for, because supervision has grown out of clinical or social work backgrounds. It used to be historically, and still is the case in those professions, that you're always supervised by someone who's got more experience than you. So in a way, the original profession is regulated, and therefore the supervisor in my drama therapy clinical role, I am regulated, if you see what I mean, as a social worker is regulated, and then they're a supervisor. So what I'm trying to be clear about, what I'm bringing into education, is that all of our team have done they are in a regulated or particular standard of profession, then they've done a supervision training of at least a year, then they are in ongoing supervision, and then they've got many years of experience. Like some people on my team have more experience than I do, like 30 years. I have my tutor on my team from 26 years ago who was my supervisor. And I can't believe it still. In fact, 2 people that were my tutors on my original training now work in my team, which I think is amazing.
It is a nationwide now. You mentioned before. I mean, what have been the challenges there then, Lisa, of growing the organisation to the point that it's reaching out, into new areas and still make it feel as though it's the quality's there because you initially you were always involved in it. I mean, is there a limit to how far this can go with that sort of approach, or how are you managing that?
The answer, I feel like I don't want to say this, and in a way I suppose I don't know yet, because I've been learning at every stage, but the quality is what matters to me, and I have a hunch that at around kind of 500, 600 people, in terms of individuals and organisations, that's going to be as much as we can hold, because that's got implications for how many people we have on our team. And what we can then kind of hold when something happens. And other people out there will computerize it and do allocations and just get people to. I can see it happening as an organisation already, that they've got a much more finance behind them. It looks Swisher, probably people can sign up. There's no relational practice to the connection.
Yes.
My dad, who died recently, taught me everything that I know, even though he ran a dairy. I'm like, supervision is about relationship, and the relationship begins with the first contact. So for me, it might seem really old fashioned, but the feedback we get is phenomenal. And it's because that begins with a phone call where, please tell me how you are, who you are, and what you need. And I listen. I have to contain that phone call, or I would be there for hours. But because I'm not doing supervision, I'm trying to match them. But I'm really clear with them about talking about what the process is, what are the issues in your school that you think you'd be bringing, who are you outside of school, because that really matters. It really matters. Who else are you? Because in supervision, you bring all of who you are. That's really important. No one goes to work as a robot. We are whole people.
It would be sad though, wouldn't it? I think it's good. It's good that you identify. You've got an idea about where it would no longer be the organisation you want it to be. Simply by going for growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
It struck me because I was talking about this on Wednesday at the University of Worcester about how do you manage an increasing number of schools coming into your trust. And I remember we had the co-op as a sponsor, the co-op group, and we were looking for some funding from the co-op to support that growth strategy. And virtually, I went into the board, the co-op board, and the chairman of the co-op group virtually doubled. One challenged us, so, well, you've put this figure in. Why have you not doubled it? Well, actually, the reason why we've not doubled it is that it's not about just taking over a Sainsbury's store and putting a sign on the top and giving everybody a new badge. There's
Yeah.
there's something much deeper going into all of this around the community and the people that work within it. But to actually
Yeah.
get to that level of growth would mean that I think we'd lose our sense of identity, but also people will feel as though it's not the organisation they thought they were buying into.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
Well, let's move on because actually, looking at that, we have spoken for nearly 18 minutes on supervision, which is fantastic. Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, I'm going to say I started with supervision. When Lisa was coming on, that was the train of thought that went through my mind, linked to a couple of other things. One was a text from a head that I was going to go out and have a drink with that said, I'm really too busy. It's mad at the moment. I can't get out. Can we do it in the holidays sometime? And it just made me think how much pressure is on heads at this time. And I know that's the same probably for deputies and senior managers, etc. But I do the people I tend to meet tend to be the head teachers. So that's the group that sticks in my mind. And I'd also rewatched an episode of House, which is an American. It's Hugh Laurie as a surgeon, and he has an interesting way of looking at issues, illnesses, and he calls it a differential diagnosis, where rather than, well, what they try and do is rule things out. So they're left with the only thing that can be the cause, not. And I just was musing over, if you looked at the education system, what would because he starts by listing the symptoms, what would the symptoms be of an education system that was perhaps not as well as it might be? And I started to list them, and we've got low recruitment for teachers, poor retention of teachers, increased absences and sickness in teachers, high exclusions of pupils, which is going up at a phenomenal rate at the moment. We've got behaviour issues. We've certainly got a behaviour czar. We've got attendance issues, and those are all symptoms of something that's not right. It's not. And at the moment, it appears to me that the answer that we've come up with is to try and fix the symptoms. So we've got a behaviour czar. We've got somebody now looking at exclusions. We're changing Teach First, I think, to a new named organisation so that it can recruit more teachers. And those are symptoms. Those are things that won't fix the real problem, which is, I think, what are we doing with our leaders? What are the stressors? What's causing these things to happen? And I think it's things as simple as Ofsted high stakes testing, lack of provision for SEND, social issues that schools have to deal with that they really shouldn't, and those are all linked to lack of funding and poverty.
Mm.
And that's what needs to be rooted out before we have any real improvement. And I also think the issue is we need to look at education again, which I know I keep banging on about, to say what's the purpose of schools, and what are we doing, what we're currently doing, why are we doing that? Because we have testing that narrows the curriculum, disenfranchises some pupils because the bits that would excite them aren't there. And they're on a no-win situation, in my view, that this is what we're going to teach, this is what we're going to do. And if you don't fit into that, you're probably part of the exclusions before long. We've got a curriculum that's now fairly prescriptive. Schools have had to list every area of knowledge that the children are going to learn. And why are we doing that? So they can retain it in order to answer some questions in a test. We're not doing that to make them more aware of the things they need to know. If that was the case, the curriculum would include things that are about life skills. And in my view, it doesn't. It's schools provide that through extracurricular or because they are strong enough to be able to say, no, we're not doing just that. We're going to do these things as well. But again, if you want to change from that, you put stress on yourself because you have to be strong enough to be able to say, well, we're not going the way. So what's the solution?
Well, this looks as though it's all planned because I know what Lisa's going to say as what's caught her eye this week, and I know what I'm going to say. And there is a thread that's running through this because can I go first, Lisa?
Absolutely.
I was watching an Australian news item about Finnish schools, and it lasted for about 20 minutes. It was a snapshot, and it was a couple of schools. It was not loads of schools around Finland, but some really, the emphasis placed on the expertise of the teacher, and that happened to be a master's qualification to get on. It's a highly regarded profession. It has only goes for the top 10% of applicants. So everybody wants to be a teacher because it's highly valued, it's reasonably well paid, it's a secure role, you have professional freedom, and actually you're a valued member of society. So who wouldn't want to be a teacher under that situation? But also the investment in education has been sustained and it's been heavy. And so when you look at the provision for a primary school in Finland, compare that to even the very, very best provision that we have in the UK, it is a massive gap. And actually, I think that when you're talking to, when you're listening to the parents talk about it, they have a high regard for the teachers. Parents are saying, well, they are experts in the field. They know more about this than I do. I don't hear that sort of language being used very often in the UK. And actually, one of the things that they do regular testing, so there's regular national testing. It's not reported on it's not a national league table, and in a way, the assessment is used in order to understand, better how well the individuals are doing. It's not about finding out how well that school's doing. The most important thing is, the school is about the individuals within it. And actually, as a parent and a grandparent, I want a school that's going to help my child and actually enable them to be part of a wider society and contribute to that. So you're saying that there's also a lot of, I think you said before we were starting to record about war-torn countries like Ukraine, where there's incredible pressure on individual teachers, but they have a clear purpose and they still need to make learning fun. So this professional, the creativity of being a professional and doing the best thing for the children. And actually sometimes, as you were saying, Lisa, in Ukraine, that might be going out and clearing, debris from the street. Imagine what that is about bringing a community together. That's a really powerful statement about an investment in all of our futures, and we're all going to play a part in that. You got a feeling of that in the Finnish video. You really did. And I think, Stan, I mean, taking away some of that competitiveness around both individual children learning, individual teachers teaching, individual head teachers being head teachers. I think we've gone way over on the competitive sort of commercial side of things, that we've lost sight of why we're doing it. I just want the children to if children have a great time at school, it's purposeful, and they come out and want to help others, and they've a joyful experience that makes them feel as though, do you know what, I want to carry on with this. This is great. I'm not sure we've got enough of those children coming out of school at the moment.
But when you talk about things like that, and when I do, you get this immediate responses. Oh yeah, but so you wouldn't teach them maths and English? Well,
Yeah.
of course you would. We're
Yeah.
not talking about lowering standards. We're talking about teaching in a different way, with a different purpose in mind. So yes, they
Joy.
are mathematical, they are literate, but their maths might include working out mortgages, or it might include being able to read meters and knowing how much electricity it's going to cost, and understanding some economics, rather than my favourite one, which is division of fractions.
Yeah. Hey, at the NGA conference yesterday that I attended, there was an excellent question offered to it was a civil servant DFE official, so he couldn't really say anything political, but it was nicely framed. So, the government's after 100% attendance. Okay. If you achieve that, you are going to have more unhappy teachers, more unhappy children, and you're actually going to find that you might have got your 100% attendance, but actually, unless you've actually addressed what you're bringing those children back to, you will not actually get the improvement that we're all wanting to see for all children around learning. And I thought, there was really no answer to that, because I think most people in the hall thought, well, he's got a good point there, I mean, because everybody's bought into the 100% attendance, a bit like the point you were making, Stan, isn't it? Unless you actually address what is life like in our schools for every single child, and is it right? It isn't right. We all know it's not right.
A colleague of mine used to work. Well, he worked in special, and he used to register some children as EBD, which was a proper term at the time. But he said, for me, it stands for every bloody day. That kid that never misses a day. You could never give the teacher a day off. Every bloody day.
Yeah. I mean, it is a theme here, though, isn't it, Lisa? Because there is a sort of sense of everybody wants education to be a joyful experience, a really rich, sort of experience for them to actually be able to use that in their later lives, and for the benefit of themselves, but also for the benefit of others. But actually, we're not there. I think we're a way off from that. So some of the outcome of that is that we have some young people, children, disaffected, don't feel happy, don't feel as though school is for them. But similarly, we have staff who feel like that, who are tied into their job, possibly because I've got a mortgage to pay, I've got two children, just gone through a divorce, all these things are playing into that. And surely that's part of the discussion that you might be experiencing when you start to unpick, as part of the supervision discussion, how people are feeling.
Absolutely on repeat every session.
Is
So
it?
we cover something of this, and so often, my team and what I hear, because I also do still deliver supervision. I don't just run talking heads. That word joy, like, it's gone. And some of where supervision can be really powerful, if we think in terms of retention, which I don't think is supervision's purpose, because sometimes helping people leave well,
Yes.
and like leaving well is a real thing, and we often are facilitating that. Instead of people making that awful, shamed, angry mess, we help them do it with dignity, which means they leave feeling very different to if we hadn't been around. But on the other end of the spectrum, it's about every session is on some level about reconnecting with that. Where do I have capacity to be creative? Where do I have power to change things? And where's the joy in this? Like, because again, all of those things go when people are dysregulated, and it's systemic. It's not the. I mean, the power does lie with us as adults, and
Yeah.
it really worries me. Glibly talking about, not that we are, but that children are going to come out of school unhappy. Well, what kind of adults are they? What lives
I
are they
know.
going to live? That is, we should be really frightened about that. And actually, that reference to kind of war-torn countries and how people are valued. One of the key things that we hear in supervision is that sense of being able to be creative. And of course, that's reflected in that being withdrawn or kind of belittled in the curriculum. But creativity is everything. When that goes, hope goes. And when hope goes, we don't want to be alive anymore. And that's an issue in our society. Creativity, creative thinking, however, that's whether it's maths, but anyway, maths meets music, maths meets the arts, religion meets those. Creativity is absolutely key, and it's joyful. And it doesn't matter what form it takes, and we can do maths joyfully. The person that helped me get my maths GCSE, I got an E first time around in school. I went to a pretty good school. It was definitely arts based. My brain is much more in that direction. But the tutor that my mum and dad got in, so I had to, because I needed to get maths, told me stories. He made sense. I've never forgotten that, because he got that what I needed, that the way that I would understand maths and be excited about it, because then I'd want to learn, was to make it interesting. So he told me stories. Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, at that conference yesterday, conscious of the time, the two senior officers didn't turn up, and that was a disappointment, both to me because I'd gone along to speak, and I was stayed on actually to listen to somebody speak, and I found out 5 minutes before they were speaking that they weren't there. And I'm just wondering, it made me wonder about we talk about how important it is to lead and to actually confront sort of challenging situations like this, because it's actually in your role, it's your job to do this, to try and bring everybody together, at least to try and make people enable people to understand your position. But it's just making me wonder about the level of, would it be viewed if a senior politician or a senior education figure in government actually sought out supervision and actually made a big thing about it? How helpful that would be to make us understand the stress and strains that they're under,
And they must be under immense strain. How often do they get the time to come out once a month and really catch up with what are they thinking, but what are they feeling? Because they must be at odds sometimes with their moral purpose and their moral compass and their ethical position. How do they bring that back together or not? Just time to, and then to think about impact. If this is the impact they're wanting to have, is the way that they're going about it and what they're getting fed back and the weight that they're carrying, is that giving them information about how they're achieving their impact? Could they do it another way? Having the time for them to sit down and catch up with themselves, it starts at the top.
Yes.
It would be invaluable. And the Prime Minister, actually, I mean, who knows, but they have one-to-one time with the King. That's a kind of supervision, those conversations that people have with the Queen or people, the high up clergy. It kind of exists, but it's maybe not external.
Yeah, well, I'd be very interested if there are any, because we had a very former senior civil servant on last week, and there was some positive reaction to what he was saying. But if anybody out there is aware of supervision system that exists for, the senior civil servants, for the senior education leaders, or for ministers, for example, we'd be really interested to hear about those.
We would do that, Frank. That, in terms of our development, absolutely we would. Those are totally. We in fact, as a team in our core team meeting the other week, we were going, actually, we're seeing head teachers, but actually we really need to be seeing more of mats. We need to go up and up and up, and be informing the system, because we're seeing these guys, but it needs to go up. So and we would have those skills. So please come to us.
Yeah. So how would they do that? There's a little plug there, isn't there, Lisa? So
A little plug. Yeah, I didn't mean it to fall in. Sorry. Well, there's the website, Talking Head Supervision. On there is my number. We left Twitter, X, for ethical reasons. I'm struggling in terms of contacts because I haven't refound those connections. But we're on LinkedIn, we're on Blue Sky. I don't use Facebook so much. Instagram, or my very favourite thing, give me a call.
Yes.
Talk about it. Yeah.
Well, I'll put a link at the end of the video, so to the website and everything. So if you just hang on a few minutes now, if you're watching, then you'll pick it up. And I'll also include, for the podcast, I'll include the website in the sort of text around what the chat's been about. So thank you very much, Lisa. It's been a really enjoyable chat again. There seemed to be a thread there, didn't there? We've never had, I don't think we have that very often, but anyway, thank you, Stan. It's the end of, this is the final weekly chat, and we have 2 more to do before we close down for the summer, which will be spotlight editions, which will release over August. But we are back in September with a full range of guests lined up well into May of next year. So it's a significant bit of our sort of lives now. So and it's really enjoyable, I have to say, Lisa, just speaking to people like you, having the chance to speak. It's the best bit of professional development I have each week. I wouldn't want to stop it. So thank you for your time, and thank you everybody for watching and listening, and we look forward to seeing you in the new academic year. Take care, everyone. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.